Others are doing a really fine job of chronicling the insane Trump administration as revealed by Michael Wolff in his bestseller before it's even released book, Fire and Fury, and the stupid reactions of the temper tantrum tweeter-in-chief. So I'll have a look at a different piece of the crazy. Following the passage of the actually not the biggest tax reduction in history act, the Republicans in Congress and the Vice President fell all over themselves praising Donald Trump and his near magical leadership, his blinding brilliance and his deal-making wizardry. That sucking up was rekindled last week when replays of Orrin Hatch debasing himself in this way were shown following his announcement of his retirement. With their over-the-top praising, these Republicans insulted and embarrassed themselves, the Republican Party, Congress, the United States of America, you and me, all humans with any sense of self-respect, and every exceptional leader throughout history. Go see the current film Darkest Hour for an example of great leadership. Then compare and contrast. If you were inclined to fawn over Trump before, you won't be afterward. Mom would have said to these suck-ups, shame on you, Trump fawners, shame on you. But today, unethical, false, phony, and sleazy words and deeds go wanting for perps who will own up to their bad behavior. Nevertheless, Mom would have been right. Perhaps you think I'm exaggerating to make a point, but I mean this exactly as stated. This is the kind of praise that Supreme Marshal and dear leader of the People's Republic of Korea demands from his citizens and his goose-stepping military. This is the kind of sycophantic obsequiousness, thank you Alan Schumann for the words, worthy of cowards, fools, and invertebrates. The suck-up was so great that it's amazing they didn't all pass out from oxygen deprivation. Next will be a Caligula-worthy announcement of Trump as God. This is exactly the kind of stupid stuff that has to stop if we're to come together as a nation. It's not just the polarizing, we're so right self-congratulations and the Trump is my dear leader sucking up. It's that the vast majority of Americans didn't want any of what is in that tax act and are more negative about it than we were about either the Clinton or the H.W. Bush tax increases. This even as the sucking up continues. If you want to see how bad this bill is, have a look at Thomas Edsall's review of the analyses done by professional number crunching people, the type of resource the Republicans did not call upon for guidance in writing the bill. Be sure to note the very real cruelty built into this fraud of a tax reform. If you want to see what corporate America has announced it will do with its upcoming windfall, read the piece from Reuters, and you'll put aside any hope that this fork-tongued tax reduction was ever about job and wage growth. For context on all of this, have a look at Christopher Ingraham's very clear piece about wealth distribution in America, and you'll understand how undemocratic and counterproductive this bill is for nearly all Americans. And understand how Republicans learned to sell tax cuts for the rich? Read Isaac Martin's piece. There are links to all the essays in my written post. Donald Trump and many Republicans in Congress went to great lengths to tell we Americans that the tax plan would primarily benefit ordinary Americans. Yet that is untrue. Every independent study of the plan tells us that at least 80% of the tax benefit goes to the wealthiest 1% of Americans, while our poor and working class children will be saddled with an additional $1 to $1.5 trillion of debt in order to send all that money to already rich people. Trump repeatedly told us that the tax plan will not benefit him or his wealthy friends, but that's factually wrong too. There are only two possible ways to understand Trump and the congressional Republicans telling us these false things. One, these guys are ignorant of the facts. They're either too lazy to learn the truth or too dim-witted to recognize it, and then too foolish to keep their ignorant mouths shut. Or two, they know the truth and are intentionally telling us something at odds with the truth. This is commonly called lying. It's why you got grounded. It's why you felt ashamed of yourself and you learned not to lie. It's possible Trump and the congressional Republicans had a different kind of upbringing, and consequently they just don't recognize what ashamed feels like or what they're supposed to do about it. Let's be clear that I think neither my judgment about the colossal fawning over Trump, nor my bashing of this miserable tax bill, nor the DC types lying about it are in conflict in any way with the come together message of my last post of 2017. We are supposed to discern between what is good, fair, and truthful versus what is simply reprehensible. The fawning and the tax bill and the lying are reprehensible. And another thing. Last September, President Trump pulled the plug on DACA, the Deferred Action for Childhood Arrivals, commonly known as the Dreamers Policy. It affects about 700,000 people who were brought to this country as children, who have known no other country, who speak English the same way you do, and who are doing the same things your children do and likely you did. They're now in school or working jobs and hoping to advance, just like you did. In every respect except for the geography of their birth, they're as American as you. Let's see if we can bring the impact of Trump's plug pulling down to a manageable number that's easy to relate to. Every 3 minutes, 2 dreamers, maybe one of them is a friend of yours, lose their protection from deportation. Every 3 minutes, 2 more dreamers live in fear of ICE agents banging down their door and hauling them away. Is that okay with you? Just in case it isn't, it's important that you know that nobody in power listens to dreamers because they have no political muscle. So they need you to speak up on their behalf. Call your senators and representatives and tell them what you want. Tell them that if they don't do what you want, that you will fire them this coming November. Note, too, that 39% of American children, that's 9 million kids, get their health care through the CHIP program, which our leader also canceled in September. That means that state by state, all those kids will lose their health care. Add these cute but poor 9 million children to the list of people our government doesn't care about. Go ahead, tell your legislators what you want done about that too. Oh, and by the way, fundamentally the same "who cares about you" message is still being delivered by our government to everyone in Puerto Rico. That's 3.4 million people. 50% of the people there still don't have electricity, and many have no clean water and little food. People are still dying from the aftermath of the hurricane, and we've pulled the bulk of our support services from the island. You might want to mention that too when you make your calls to your legislators. Exactly when did the Republican Party become the "who cares about you" party? I'm Jack Altshuler.